Story 1. I'm Not Following You. Posted by Fuzzy Yuzu. I take a walk every morning as part of my waking up routine. This morning, towards the beginning of my walk, I pass a man who asks me something. He is slightly too close to me, but not enough to make me uncomfortable, just enough that I don't want to slow down or have a listen to what he has to say. I have my earphones in as well, and don't take them out, but hear enough that he had asked for the time. Without breaking my stride, I glance at my watch, say 7:30, and keep walking. If he said anything else, I didn't hear. About 20 minutes or half an hour later, well far away from the first time I came across this guy, that same guy walks up from behind, again too close to me, to ask for the time. I tell him at that point to get away from me, stop following me, and that I already gave him the time. That escalates things immediately because he shoots back. Why? Is it because I'm black? I respond no. It's because he approached me about a mile away with the same question. He says he lives in the neighborhood, so I say fine, but please stop following me. He denies following me and calls me Ching Chong bitch and yells for me to go back to China as I cross the street to put more distance between us. This guy follows me across the street and keeps following me as I cross back over. At this point, I'm yelling for him to get away from me and stop following me. He's repeating the same lines about being black and hurling racial slurs at me. I'm getting worried that while there are people out at 8 a.m. either walking their kids to school or going to work, no one's going to step up because of bystander effect. After I cross the street for a second time, he gets right in my face yelling about how he's not following me. I have my back against an apartment complex and am getting worried that things are going to get physical when a tall woman with pink hair walks up. I don't remember what she said, but I at some point confirmed to her that he wasn't leaving me alone. She's about the same height as this guy and starts to yell for him to stop following me. He is now being badgered by her, and he's also yelling back the same denials about not following me, being from the neighborhood, and accusing that this is all because he's black. Thanks to my lady savior, I'm able to break away. A couple that was exiting their apartment, who witnessed all of this, ask if I'm all right, which I say yes without stopping. I walk half a neighborhood block down to duck through an alley. As I'm walking down the alley, checking the entire time to make sure that guy's not following me, I see the woman with the pink hair has disengaged and is walking off. I'm so glad it didn't escalate for her and feel bad for not being able to thank her for her help. I take a circuitous route home, looking behind my shoulders every once in a while. Story 2. Posted by Same Page 75. The worst substitute. This was in middle school. My teacher was absent one day, and this gym coach was substituting for him that day. I've seen him around the school before, and he's substituted for us a few times. I was sitting in my desk talking to my friend behind me and pretending to do my work. And for some reason, he decided to walk around the room to check if we were doing the assignment. So I turned to my desk and started writing. He goes one by everyone's desk, but slows down once he reaches mine. He hovers over me, just staring down at my work. I got nervous BC, I didn't want him calling me out. But for some reason, I felt his breath on me heavily, which was grossing me out. He was a frail, old-looking man, so I didn't think much of it. He walked really slow and seemed harmless, but was very passive-aggressive when he spoke to us. I'd always get this weird, creepy vibe from him, but always thought it was just me. A few months go by, and the rumor of him being fired circled around the school. I was curious, so I'd ask around to know what the was. Apparently, the same teacher that would sub for my class was fired. He was caught trying to touch the girls during practice, and throughout gym periods, he touched a girl, which was soon reported by the student. And he even got caught hiding in the crack of the door, watching the girls change in the locker room. He'd just watch them. He finally got caught while doing so, and he was soon fired and kicked out of the school. The news made it everywhere, even on the news. It spread like wildfire. Thinking back on it now, it gives me chills to think that he'd watch girls change. And thank goodness he got caught. You never know people's intentions. Story 3. Posted by a Lover. Creepy man watching me while babysitting. Before I start, I must say I haven't told many people this. Mostly because it was a very scary experience for me. This happened in Kelowna, Canada in the 80s. I was about 14 and was babysitting at a neighbor's house while the parents were gone. They had a nice house, like most in the neighborhood, and it was right on the corner where 2 streets connected. My house was right outside a bus stop across from theirs. This happened pretty late at night in the winter, so it was dark out. Maybe 11 or 12 at night. I was sitting on the couch when I thought I saw something out the back door. It was one of those glass doors that lead to the porch. It was weird though because I couldn't see much. You know when the lights are on and it's dark out, so you can't see anything but black and your reflection? That's what I saw. But I could have sworn it looked like something was there. So I got up and walked close to the window. It definitely looked like something was there, but I still couldn't see. I got closer. Still couldn't see. I honestly should have just turned on the lights, but instead I put my face right to the glass and cupped my hands by my eyes to look out. Maybe about 1 inch from my face on the other side of the glass was a man. He looked tall and pale from what I could see, which wasn't much, and he was staring at me very scarily. Keep in mind he would have been watching from the backyard. Naturally, I jumped back and let out a short scream. But stupid teenage me didn't call the cops. I called my parents instead. My father came over to take a look. There were still footprints in the front and backyard. I don't remember much after that because it just felt like a very unreal experience. You never expect this stuff to happen to you until it does. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the story because I sure didn't enjoy experiencing it. Story 4. Posted by Far Spread. Creep on the bus to the shady side of town. I, F21, was visiting my cousin in a neighboring city. She lives in a middle of nowhere suburb with high crime. Her specific area is more secluded and safer, but you have to ride the bus through the shady part first to get there. I rode the bus to the center of this city and got on another bus towards the suburb. When I got on, I paid my fare and quietly asked the ticket guy to announce my stop. He said it would be a long way. I huddled in a seat towards the tail of the bus and waited for the bus to depart, keeping a close watch over my possessions. As the stops came and went, the bus became packed and a lady sat next to me at some point. Sitting across from me on the front of the bus was a man that looked to be in his late 20s, chatting with a group of friends. He kept staring at me. When the lady next to me got off the bus, he rushed to get up walking towards me, presumably to sit next to me, but thankfully another passenger was faster and took the seat, so he went back to his friends. I remained composed, but my gut was telling me something was very off. In that moment, the ticket guy, who was handing out tickets to new passengers, loudly tells me that my stop is in 2 stops. I see the creep look at the ticket guy, then at me, and then exchange a look with his friends. We had reached the middle of nowhere part of the suburb, where the stops were literally in the middle of nowhere, with few sparse buildings and no people on the street. It had started to get dark. At this point, I was aware I needed to think fast, and think fast I did. The bus came to a stop and the doors opened. I waited until the last moment, got up and made my way towards the doors at the end of the bus. The guy jolted up from his seat and hurried his way to the other door, which was in the middle of the bus and closest to him. He walked out right before the doors closed, but I remained inside. When he realized I didn't get off, he started following the bus. I still wasn't safe because he knew my stop was next. I talked to the ticket guy and the driver, and God bless their hearts, they kept watch over me. Let me ride the bus to the end of the line and back, and my cousin's family waited for me at the bus stop on the way back. Story 5. Posted by Happy and in Grace. Followed in my car. I've been reading stories on this sub for a while and figured this belonged in here. 3 years ago, I, 17F, at the time, was driving down a very busy street in my fairly large city. I was in the left lane and had my indicator on to move into the right lane. For context, the speed limit on said street is 45 miles per hour, justifiably so, but most people drove at 70 mph plus. I put my indicator on a reasonable time before my turn, but this car to my right was driving very recklessly. Eventually, I slowed down to allow him to pass. Instead of doing so, he matched speed with me. Following this, I sped up, inadvertently cutting him off, and took the right turn. He very quickly turned behind me, riding my bumper to the point I thought he hit it, and on a very narrow two-way street, came up next to me. He rolled his window down, pulled out a gun, and said, "Yeah, bitch, is this what you want?" Windows were down, and continued pointing it at me until he saw another car coming down the street, at which point he went ahead and overtook me to avoid being hit. As a 17 years old, I was terrified. I'm also not from the US, so having a gun so close to me was even scarier. Just glad it didn't escalate. Never cut someone off after that. Story 6. Posted by Same Page 75. Creepy Stranger Encounters. One day I was with my cousins and we were riding our bikes around this abandoned track, filled with a bunch of trees. An hour or so passed and this middle-aged man enters through the gate. He had an orange bag on, a blue shirt and some jeans on. He also had a black cap on. He sits down on a log and watches us the whole time. Me and my cousins were obviously creeped out and just ignored him. He seemed to be eating his food or whatever, so we just thought he was minding his business, and we were just being paranoid. After like 3 hours, we were all pretty thirsty and tired. There was a store right around the corner where we could have gotten some snacks and drinks, so we decided to leave. It was getting late anyways. Mind you, the man was still there just watching us. While leaving, I ran over a rock and my bike leaped forward a little, almost knocking me off my bike. I laughed it off and we went on. Once we reached the store, I reached inside my pocket for my phone. It wasn't there. I asked my cousins if they had it. They said no. So I frantically told my cousin to go run back and check if I had dropped it, and he did. He comes back after 5 minutes and there was no sign of my phone. I start freaking out and I run back to the track field to look for it myself with my bike. I searched the grass, the trees, everything, but I still couldn't find my phone. Then I started realizing something. The man was still there, watching me frantically looking for my phone. He just sat there and stared at me. Both my cousins come back from the store and find me still looking for my phone. My older cousin finally pulled out her phone and tries to track mine down. Thankfully, I always had my location on. The GPS on her phone showed that my phone wasn't far away from me and it was where I was at. I was about to declare victory until my cousin whispered in my ear, "What if that guy has it?" The idea wasn't completely absurd. He was actually sitting in the area where my phone claimed to be according to the GPS. But I just brushed it off and told her that wasn't going to accuse a random stranger of stealing my phone. She calls me stupid and we just kept searching. As I was still searching, my bigger cousin kept a close eye on the guy, which he was still chilling over there. Few moments later, he starts walking away. My cousin looks down on her phone up at the guy right when he started moving. My phone on her GPS started moving as well in the same direction he was moving, so my cousin taped my shoulder and showed me what was happening. I started to freak out. My heart dropped. I didn't have idea how to deal with the situation. My cousin ended up telling me that we had to confront him or I would never have my phone back and we cannot let him leave with it because it was my phone after all. So I did just that. I slowly ran up to him and politely approached the man. "Excuse me, sir. Have you seen a pink phone anywhere?" He slowly turned around and just looked me up and down with this sinister, mocking, smirking look on his face. He denies that he had ever seen a phone and started walking away. The GPS is literally moving once he start walking away again. My cousin says, "At this point, I was pissed. Not the fact that he took my phone, but the fact that he lied to my face. He looked at me dead in the eyes and told me that he hadn't seen my phone. I gave him a chance to come clean. I could have been aggressive, but I wasn't. I was a polite and patient, even though he was the one with my phone. At this point, I was pissed, so I scream, "Hey, stop!" He stops in his tracks, but slowly puts his hand in his pocket. I thought fast and assumed that he was gonna pull out a weapon, so I stepped back. Not to my surprise, he pulls out my phone and hands it to me then, nervously laughing and apologizing. "You're lucky we didn't call the police," my cousin says. The word police clearly scared him, and he starts apologizing, then he flees. My cousin was fuming, and so was I. I started cussing at him and yelling, and I was just overwhelmed about the situation. What would you have done in this situation? Story 7. Posted by Some Velvet Sundown. Man stole my plushie when I was little. I never really thought about this as a creepy story until I got some creeped out reactions when retelling it now as an adult. I hope it fits here. This happened years ago, so I'll do my best to accurately describe it. I do have a pretty good memory of my childhood, so here it goes. When I, 28F, was about 3 years old, I was with my mom at a grocery store/market. I was carrying a plushie with me, as I often did at that age, and holding my mom's hand with my free hand. It was a plushie of Tweety. While we were walking down one of the aisles, I dropped my plushie, and by the time I got my mom's attention and we turned to get the plushie, a man had picked it up. Instead of giving it to a worker or anything normal, he walked off with the plush. My mom called out repeatedly in an attempt to retrieve the plushie, and we followed the man up until the entrance/exit of the store. At that point, my mom stopped following him. He got into his car and left, without even having bought anything. A store security guard then came. He asked why I was crying, to which I replied, "Southeast levo mi Tweety." He took my Tweety in Spanish. He asked my mom who took it, and she told him that the man had gone to the parking lot and gotten into his vehicle, but there was nothing the security could do at that point. Years later, I still remember this, and it still makes me kind of mad to think about it. Story 8. Posted by Pew Pew 332. Strange man tried to hug me on the sidewalk. This encounter happened a few months ago. For context, I, 18M, live about 1.5 kilometers away from a shopping center, or just under a mile. The route I take usually requires me to turn 2 corners and walk straight for the rest of the journey. Although pretty early on in the walk, there is a tall apartment block to the left of the pathway along the main road. I would say it has about 4 or 5 levels. I live in a shady area, and previously the apartment block had a case of a stabbing that killed a woman a year before my story takes place. I witnessed the cleanup crews hosing the area down when that happened. This caused me to be pretty weary of the area in general. On this day in particular, I needed to go to the shopping center to pick up a couple supplies. I noticed as I started walking the pathway of the straight road that the sky was pretty dark. It was early in the afternoon, so this meant a storm was on the way. Not a drop of rain fell as I made my way to the shop. Once I had arrived, I picked up what I needed and went window shopping for a while. When I was satisfied, I exited through the door I had originally entered and began walking back home. I made it to the final set of traffic lights that was probably a 7-minute walk away from my house. The rain started to trickle at first, and then after that it poured pretty heavily. 3 minutes later, I could see the apartment block about 20 meters ahead to the right. The rain was still pouring down, and so the visibility wasn't that great. But what I could make out was a man in a dark green poncho. He had the hood of the poncho over his head and a big grin on his face for some reason. As I got closer and closer to him, I didn't like the feeling I was getting. He reached his arms out almost as if he was attempting to bring me into his embrace, keeping that same smile he had before. The man was 5 meters distance from me when I took the opportunity to cross onto the median strip of the main road. I noticed his glance followed me as I crossed into the middle grassy patch. Even though there was no traffic, he decided not to chase me down and continued walking along the pathway as he kept eye contact with me. The thought of what might have happened if I walked into his arms still frightens me today. Even if he didn't mean any harm and was not trying to grab me, I still didn't like the vibe I got from him. And when I reached the middle of the road, I felt safer and relieved, especially considering he didn't attempt to follow behind me. TLDR, on my walk back home from a shopping trip, a man in a green poncho stared me down with a smile on his face and his arms out. I had a feeling he was going to hurt me, so I crossed the road to avoid him. He continued to stare into my eyes as I tried to get away from him. Story 9. Posted by Carrie Bagman. Train creep. I've kept this one inside for nearly 15 years now. Finding the right platform to relieve a burden is nice. When I was 15, I went to a show in Liverpool, UK with a friend. My friend told me he was staying at a friend's house, so I boarded the 25-minute train home alone. This was the last train home. At around 23:30, I found a seat and stared out of the window as the city lights faded into peripheral twinkles. Some 5 minutes in, my trance was broken by the soft croak of an older guy, maybe 50 with dusty blonde hair and aviator-framed glasses. "Hello, young man. Are you okay? You look lonely?" Shocked and confused, I nodded. "I'm okay, thanks. The name's Dean. Do you like smoking weed and drinking beers? I've got some at my house. Are you stopping at Crew? You could pop in. No, I'm getting off at Runcorn," I mistakenly replied, cringing internally. I excused myself to use the bathroom. As I made my way hastily across the carriage, the twinkling city lights now replaced by dank fields and semi-urban decay, I peeked back, noticing the man playing with what seemed to be a needle. I speed up to the bathroom and locked the door. It was only 10 more minutes until my stop. The next stop is Runcorn. I don't think a digitized train announcement has ever sounded so heavenly. I threw the door open and bolted to the exit. As my feet touched the station floor, I felt a firm grip on my shoulder. Looking back in fear and trying to shake off the grip, I acted fast and instinctively. I shouted, "Dad," at a completely empty on the other side of the gate. The now stumbling backwards, Dean let out a "oh fuck" under his breath and ran to the other side of the train, while I ran through the gate, sprinted all the way home, and told my parents, who told the police. We never heard anything. Story 10. Posted by Granny Garbanzo. Stepmom saved me from a creepy lady in McDonald's. I was 11 years old when this happened, currently F24, visiting my dad and stepmom over the summer in Saskatchewan, Canada. My dad worked long days during the week, so on her day off he had planned for my stepmom to take my sister, 8 at the time, and I out for a day to get some bonding time in with us, as we didn't know her super well yet. She took us to get our nails done, to the mall, and on the way home we stopped at a McDonald's. We planned on eating inside in the restaurant, but it was very busy, so my stepmom asked my sister and I to find a table and wait there while she went to the counter to order our food. I noticed this rough, older-looking woman, possibly 60s/70s, looking towards the direction of the table my sister and I were seated at. All I could remember is thinking she looked like a drugged-out Susan Boyle. She looked possibly homeless and addicted, so I didn't give her much of a thought, letting her do her own thing, and I just tried to talk to my sister about random stuff. Once my stepmom came back to the table, this woman was seemingly already approaching us, and then stopped beside us. She just said hello, so we all kinda said hi back and tried to ignore her. She asked if we were my stepmom's daughters, so she says, "They're my stepdaughters," trying to be simple to kinda shut her down. The lady says we were beautiful girls and begins to walk towards the door. She stops one last time and asks, "How old are they?" We had the impression she was on her way out, so my stepmom just says to her, 11 and 8. Her eyes lit up and she looked at me with a strange look. "I've always wanted an 11-year-old. I'd buy her from you." That definitely crossed a line, so my stepmom finally tells her we are trying to eat lunch and asks her what she's even saying in a somewhat aggressive tone. The lady got one last look at me and then she finally left. She definitely didn't have the money to buy me, even if I was for sale anyways, LOL, so I wasn't worried. I think she was possibly on some drugs and not in the right mind. But knowing my shy ass at 11, I wouldn't have known how to get rid of this lady if she tried to talk to us without my stepmom there. We weren't super close then, but I respected her a lot after that day for being ready to protect us even in a minor situation like that. Story 10. Posted by Dancing Unicorn. Creep at Diner. My auntie owns a local diner in the middle of a small town where everyone knows everyone. Recently, she had almost half of her waiters quit within a month, which she knew about but didn't tell me why when telling my mom this, and I overheard it while doing homework at the dining table. Then she asked my mom if my 2 older sisters could help out, but my mom said that the oldest is moving out of town to live with her fiancé, but agreed to let my second older sister work. Then my auntie asked about me. Mind you, I'm a 15 years old girl, and the last thing on my mind to do after school is going to work, even for a few hours. Even if I find time to get home in the evening and finish my homework, I still wouldn't like the idea at all. My mom was quiet for a little before agreeing, since even I know that money is a touchy subject. Ever since my dad divorced my mom, I was chosen to stay with my mom 100% because my dad is an alcoholic and often liked to hurt my mom and have done some nasty things to my sisters and I. I don't know where he is now, probably in jail or married to another poor woman who will be his next victim, but that's partially the reason why we are struggling when it comes to money. Fast forward a week. I went to school on a Wednesday morning like normal, except I had to pack a set of extra clothes in my already stuffed backpack. My aunt talked to me and told me I have to wear a uniform and she doesn't want my mom to know what I wear, so she wants me to put it into my backpack instead of going to school in it. She even said she can wash it every week since it'll probably smell like eggs and other diner foods. I usually take the bus to school, so days that I work, I would take another bus that dropped me off about a 2-minute walk from the diner. The bus drivers really didn't care about if we got off on unusual stops, or maybe they had no idea and were just working for a paycheck, much like I'm about to do. And each end of my shift, my auntie will drop me off back home, after I changed back, of course. Once at the diner, I would go to the back, through the kitchen, which had 2 chefs who worked harder than any cook I've ever seen, and right to my auntie's office. There I could see her computer on a desk, a whole lot of paperwork, clothes all around, and just a total mess. So my outfit is basically a button-down white t-shirt, a white miniskirt, and one of those tiny aprons that only cover from waist to crotch area. I kind of liked the way this fits on me, but the fact that I'm wearing all white means I'm going to get dirty, maybe every night. My sister has a similar outfit, but her skirt is longer since she sometimes does shave her legs or something. I just know that I don't have the same issues she has. The first night went well. I got a lot of people looking at me funny and asked if I'm a kid, to which I told them my age, and some of them were upset a kid is working. Some were happy that they think I'm trying to help the family business, and some were just weird and happy to just see me. Whatever the reason it was, I just like talking to people, so this was super easy. Plus, most of them didn't mind if I would bring out 1 plate at a time instead of like 5 or 6 like pro waitresses. Friday night comes around, and this is the night I finally meet the guy who's one of the main reasons why those other waitresses quit. My auntie really wanted me to meet him since he's in about 3 or 4 times a week and orders a good portion. His name was Larry, and he seems really nice and friendly. He even treated me more like a friend than a waitress, and would have me sit down with him while he told me stories about how he fixed cars, travels for work, eats at every restaurant ever, and stayed at every hotel in the world. I never told him my age, but I'm pretty sure he can tell I'm a minor. Often enough, he sits at a booth in the corner of the restaurant and would ask me to sit beside his, so he could kick his feet up on the other side bench, which I didn't mind, but it only started to get weird when he would poke one of the buttons hidden from my apron and think it's my belly button and ask if I had an outie belly button and if I'm ticklish. I do in fact have an outie belly button, but I didn't tell him that. I would just fake a giggle. Sometimes I would feel his hand brush up on my chest, which I don't care much of either, but there was a few times I felt like he was feeling my chest for my nipple, which I still don't know why he would want to see them since my chest is still pretty flat. Again, I'm 15, I know it'll grow. Sometimes he grabbed my arm or thigh and give me massages, which really don't feel good, and if I tell him I don't like it, he just tells me it'll start to like it. Usually after every visit from Larry, I would make up a dozen excuses that I needed to go before he would accept and let me go. I didn't mind anything weird about Larry, he seems innocent enough, like a grandpa who just wants to spend time with his grandkids, but I really wish I wasn't chosen to babysit him every time he comes here. And since he spends like $100 a week here, my auntie tells me to just ignore and let him ramble on since he's the reason this business is still afloat. Which are my auntie's words, and I'm pretty sure $100 a week cannot cover rent alone. After about a week of seeing Larry almost most of my shift, he came in with his laptop and showed me his Facebook and told me to look myself up so we can be friends. I seriously don't want Larry in my life 24/7, so I just lied and told him I never made a Facebook. He simply laughed, thought for a second, and wrote my whole name out in the search bar. For a second, I was so shocked that I turned pale, even for my light skin. I had a name tag, but only my first name. But my stupid sister probably told him our last name when he asked. She may be older, but she doesn't act like it. He found a picture of me and sent a FR, to which my phone goes off, making Larry laugh and my heart drop into my stomach. He sent me a few messages just to hear my phone go off a few times as I pulled it out and fake laughed before swallowing the throw up in my mouth. He then proceeds to go through my gallery, which my FB is public since I was pretty stupid enough to want to make as many friends as possible, much like Instagram, and try to gain as many followers. He found pics of me that I wish he wouldn't find and could comment on how my clothes are too revealing and I should take these pics down. He commented on my friends and how he could find me a good set of friends to be with, to which I had no idea who he's referring to since he told me before he's since. No kids, and lives alone. Then, even seeing pics of me with my belly button revealed and comment on my outie belly button and poke my belly again. I could really feel his finger trying to find my belly button again, which just felt so disgusting that I just got up without a reason this time and just stormed to my auntie's office. I confessed everything to her and told her how disgusted I am, and at first she seemed to be on my side, but when I explained the things he did to me, she quickly changed sides and told me I'm just over-exaggerating and he's just treating me like a kid in a friendly way. I wanted to burst out crying and asked my sister for help, even wanting to talk to Mom about this and confess it all, but my sister calmed me down and told me how Auntie would have to let us go, then he wouldn't have enough money to keep our apartment, and then we'll have to live with Dad. I had no idea if this were true, but the things my dad did to me are in fact worse than what Larry had done so far. Fast forward a few months to present day. I still work at the diner and still see Larry on an almost daily basis. He still acts the same and once in a while touches me, but it's gotten to the point that it's nothing too concerning, like my chest or thigh, which I still don't care about too much. I only care when he tries to touch my belly button or nipple. I know that for summer, Mom will make me work, and because of my age, I legally can't find a job anywhere else. I'm pretty much okay if I have to keep working for summer. The only good thing about Larry is that he would often order twice in one sitting, which made Ani very happy, and I would get a good tip because of it. I guess if you have advice, then I'll take it, but I don't think getting rid of Larry will be of my best interest since I've read too many creepy stories of stalker situations, and trying to escape the creep only makes things worse, but also Auntie probably would fire me, and Mom would be upset. If I reveal all of this to Mom, this would only make our family situation much worse since my mom relies on Auntie way too much. But either way, it feels good to share this. I feel like just talking about it makes me feel better, and reading other stories makes me feel like I'm not alone, and maybe I'll find help in the best way. I might be in this situation for a while, but sharing it relieves some of the stress. Thanks again for listening. If I have any updates, I will post them here. Edit. Thank you everyone for your comments. I wish I could respond to all of them. I am glad everyone is so nice and helpful, and the messages of advice too. I want to talk to my mom, but I'm scared this will make her worried for me and bring her down. My mom secretly drinks to relive her problems. I think she gets it from my dad, but she's not violent. I know she will blame herself for all of this, and I don't like seeing my mom drink and get worse. I think I'll work through summer vacation and quit after. Larry still comes almost every day. After reading some comments, yesterday I told him I will be deleting my FB and made it private and deleted him from my friends. He was sad and asked a lot about if I'm okay and gave me advice that I think is good. I still don't think Larry is a bad person, he just is lonely, I think. I didn't talk to my auntie yet. I love my auntie and I don't think she will want to put me in danger, but I think she also doesn't think Larry is a bad person. I really want to work hard this summer and make lots of tips for mom, maybe enough that it can make up for when I stop working after summer vacation. Story 11. Posted by Dolly 1992. 3 people dressed in all black with white face masks. Original post was deleted due to wall of text rules. Feels a bit silly reposting, but still want to share nonetheless as it was a very creepy encounter. This happened last night. I was almost home after a long day of traveling, and it was approximately 1 a.m. as I rounded a corner and stopped at the intersection right near my home. The light was red, and as I slowed to a stop, out of the corner of my eye, I saw 3 people on the sidewalk. They were all dressed in black and wearing white face masks or face paint, or a combination of the two. One was crouched on the ground, while the other 2 were standing crooked. They were still as statues when I came to a stop, but when I looked at them, they all started crawling/walking towards me. I was exhausted, and apparently my instinct in moments of terror is to just laugh and shake my head like I was in on the joke. They were super close to my car, but thankfully the light turned green and I was able to get out of there before they reached my car. Since you could see the corner of my house from the intersection, I ended up just driving for quite a while and then turning around once it felt like enough time had passed so that they wouldn't follow my car pulling into the street I live on. I imagine it was just some teens playing a prank, but afterwards I was thinking about it being a school night and most people wouldn't be having sleepovers in the middle of the week. I'm debating if it's worth calling the non-emergency line to report it just in case. Regardless, I shan't be going out past sundown for quite some time, and I'll likely invest in some door lock reinforcements. Story 12. Posted by Brian Boru. The Grinning Man at the Park. This happened to me roughly 10 years ago. For reference, I'm and would have been in my early to mid-40s then. I was meeting a friend for coffee and was running a bit early, so I had about half an hour to kill, so I stopped at a little park on the way to the coffee place. It had a parking area along the main road that led to the park itself, which was basically an asphalt trail around a small oval-shaped pond which was half-lined with a wooded area. There was a shelter and restrooms and a kids' playground right near the parking lot. It was late morning and very sunny and getting warm, so I opened the driver's side window all the way and the passenger side window an inch or so. I was scrolling through emails on my phone when I noticed movement a few yards away on the trail. A young man in black sweatpants and a black hoodie was stretching with his back towards me. I was the only car parked in the lot at the time. I went back to my phone and emails when suddenly there was a pounding on the passenger side window. It was the guy who had been stretching a minute ago. He scared the crap out of me. I asked him, "Can I help you?" He didn't reply but put his face by the crack in the window and was grinning with a crazed look in his eyes. I quickly started the car up and shut both windows just as he dashed over to my side of the car and began trying to open the door. I honked the horn a couple times and shouted at him asking what his problem was. He was still grinning like an idiot and not saying anything. Another car suddenly pulled into the lot and parked a few spaces away, and the grinning guy turned and ran off towards the woods. I pulled out and left the park, checking in my mirror to make sure he didn't come back out. That event weirded me out for some time afterwards, and I was thankful my car doors were locked and that I was able to close the windows before anything could happen. Story 13. Posted by Huligal. Creepy guy at the mall. I was at a large outdoor mall in Columbus, Ohio, and wanted to do a little shopping before going into work nearby at 2 p.m. So, keep in mind this happened on a Wednesday afternoon in May. I parked on the first floor of a garage, a row directly across from the main entrance of the indoor mall area towards the back. As soon as I parked, I made eye contact with a guy walking in the next row. I was 26F at the time, and this guy looked to be around my age, if not younger. He turned towards me and started walking my way. I put my head down, started gathering my things, and next thing I knew, he was knocking on my window. I can't remember if I already had the window down or if I rolled it down more, but anyways, the window was almost halfway down. He asked me where the closest restroom was. I told him there is one as soon as you walk in the main entrance of the mall. He said he didn't know where that was and if I would show him there. I pointed and said, "You literally just need to walk down this row and go through the doors and the signs will be right there." He really wanted me to show him where it was. He just stood there and looked at me for what felt like forever after he realized I wasn't going to get out and show him to the restroom. He then asked me if he could hop in the back seat real quick, and that's when my confusion went to panic. I really started to panic. I don't even remember if I responded to that right off the bat. He just kept going on asking if he could get in and then asked to hook up in the back seat, and I, being a nice person I guess, just said, "No thank you, I have a boyfriend, I'm sorry," to which he responded, "It's okay, I have a girlfriend and I love her." This just kept going on, me telling him I needed to go and get to work and that I was sorry. He kept texting or something with his phone during the conversation too. I was afraid he'd try to open my door and I didn't want to lock them and somehow trigger this guy into doing something else. Somehow I finally got the courage to start the car back up, reversed the car, and I got the absolute F out of there before he could say anything else. I worked a couple blocks away and hurried into the building before I called security. I have no idea what this guy's intentions actually were. I truly felt that he was trying to get me out of the car and possibly had other people close by. Maybe he really did just want to hook up, but who in their right mind goes about it in that kind of way? Was he bait for human trafficking? Was he just trying to rob me? He just seemed to be a normal person until the interaction furthered. Thankfully, but not, I was in a rental car because mine had been stolen exactly 3 weeks prior to this happening. Just very happy this guy did not see what I typically drove if he happened to snag the license plate and make / model of the car. What do you think this was? Any similar experiences? I still think about this, and it's been about 2 years now. Story 14. Posted by Banana Slippery Sticks. Crazy woman threatening to call CPS. This isn't really creepy, but it was scary for sure. No, I am not the parent in this situation, but rather the kid. This was, who knows, years ago. I was young, maybe like 7 or 8, think 7. I was with my 2 other siblings, my little bro and older sis. We're all 3 years apart. Anyways, we were all in the car, waiting for our mom, who had gone inside a Pizza Delight to pick up our food, which she had pre-ordered beforehand. This was in Bears Lake, I think. We were only alone in there for a minute, and I was tired, so I was half asleep against the window. I was abruptly woken up to aggressive and loud banging on our car window. My sister, maybe 10 at the time, was sitting shotgun. I was in the backseat diagonal from her, and my little brother, Prop 4, was beside me. We all immediately looked to where the sound came from and saw a 40 to 50-year-old looking lady. I don't remember much about her, and it was laid out, but her hair was kind of frizzy, thin, and crazy looking. It was silvery blonde. She had a receding hairline and was sweating profusely on her forehead. She looked a little on the heavy side, and her face was practically pressed up against the glass, and she had an intense, crazy look. She held her phone up against the window, my sister's window, with the white emergency dial screen up, and yelled something at us. I can't remember what. My mom was literally walking back to the car when this happened and was like, WTF. So she immediately gets into the car, and the woman runs around to her door and grabs it, yelling at her about how she's a terrible person for leaving her kids alone in a car and that she was gonna call CPS. Our mom explains to her that she was only gone for 5 minutes max and that she had a 10-year-old in the car with a phone. The car was locked, and she could see the car from where she was in the restaurant. The lady keeps screaming at my mom, though, and grabs my mom's wrist. So my mom, who is in the military, immediately rips her hand off her wrist and slams her door shut, rolls down the window to give her the bird and books it. The woman was screaming the whole time and looked genuinely insane and terrifying. Anyways, we later dubbed her Pizza Karen around 2020 when we were reminiscing about the event and laugh about it now. But yeah, that's my story. Hope it temporarily fulfilled your boredom. Story 15, hosted by Cool Girl Here. Stranger in park started asking me suspicious about my autistic son. My youngest son is autistic and 5 years old. It's very obvious that he's autistic. He constantly stims with his hands, rocks back and forth, and doesn't respond to communication. He's a Gestalt language processor, so he repeats catchphrases that only I can understand. For instance, he will say, "whittle wobbles," when he has a hole in his sock. Saturday, I took him and my daughter, 8, to the park. A man, probably in his mid to late 30s, was there with who he said was his niece. Her and my daughter hit it off, so he came over to talk to me. My son is in his own little world, but playing on the equipment from time to time. And he hits himself in the head, so I constantly redirect him. The man asks if my son is autistic, and I say yes. He then asks when he was diagnosed. I told him at the age of 2, almost 3. He asks if he's in regular classes or special needs. I don't answer him right away because I'm getting uncomfortable. He can tell and responds with, "I think my nephew is autistic and he's 3. So I let my guard down a little, which was the wrong decision. I tell him he's in a special needs class. He asks what school because he wants to know options for his nephew. I hesitate and then tell him the 4 schools in the district that offer a special needs class, not specifying which school my son goes to. Then he asks if my son runs off a lot. I just reply sometimes. He notices the GPS tracker on my son's ankle. He asks how well that tracks him and if he ever tries to take it off. At this point, I realize that this is not a conversation I want to have. I tell him that I'm not comfortable talking to him about this anymore. He responds with, "I'm concerned about my nephew." I tell him not all autistic children are the same and he should get him evaluated. I call my daughter over, who is upset BC. She was having fun playing with the little girl, and pick up my son and we go to the car. I'm watching him as we leave and he's just staring at us. My daughter asks why we had to go, and I tell her that we have to go home and do stuff around the house. She's very intuitive and asks, "Is it because of that girl's stepdad?" I ask her why she thinks he was her stepdad, and she said that the little girl told her he was her mom's boyfriend. I ask what else she said about him. She tells me the little girl said, "Man's name, likes to talk to girls like your mom, and it makes my mom mad." I then ask if there was anything else, and she tells me the girl said she was glad she met my daughter because she's an only child and doesn't get to play with other kids except at school. She also tells me the little girl asked for her phone number and wanted to see her again soon. The man was lying to me. For what reason, I don't know. I can only assume to make it seem like he was single. Could be more sinister than that. I have no idea. I immediately call the police and tell them everything. They get my info and say they are sending an officer to the park. By the time the officer got to the park, a couple hours later, they were, of course, gone. I give the dispatcher a description, the man and little girl's first names, and what I think he was driving since it was just us there, so I assume it was his vehicle in the lot. They tell me they will call if they need any more information. Lesson learned. I'm almost certain that he took advantage of my willingness to help another autistic person to try to get information about my son or about me. Update: the man has been found and arrested. My brother shared my story with his friend, who is a sheriff's deputy in the county to the south of me. They had gotten similar reports about a man matching the same description. One report included him allegedly trying to lure a disabled toddler away from his mother at a trampoline park. They had video and his license plate this time. My brother's friend sent me the guy's mugshot and asked if this was the man. It was. My brother's friend was investigating the trampoline park incident, but since it was a different county, didn't know of my report until my brother shared it with him. I asked about the girl that was with him, and he couldn't tell me anything other than she's safe. They arrested him in a county almost 2 hours away from me yesterday. I found out his full name and looked up all his charges. He had a warrant in the state to the north of me for so many things, including stalking, violating a protective order, and child endangerment. And now new charges due to the trampoline park incident. Since nothing technically illegal happened in my situation, he won't have charges brought against him for that. But my story may be needed for his case. I'm not a lawyer or law enforcement, so I don't know specifics on how or why, but maybe to show a trend of his behavior. Targeting disabled children? When I find out more, I'll update here. Parents, trust your instincts. I know some comments think I went too far calling the police, but in this case, I am confident now that I did not. Who knows how many times he may have done this, but it went unreported. Story 16. Posted by Giona. I woke up to a girl watching me in my sleep. My female friend came to visit me for a long weekend, and I, 22F, won't be letting her stay ever again. Backstory: we were friends for 3 months before we both moved to separate states and continued our friendship virtually until now. It has been a healthy friendship with open communication. We have had our disagreements, but mostly always talked it out and moved on. They mostly revolve around her believing I don't open up enough, and for me, she does things that are inconsiderate at times, like be jealous of my long-term friends to their faces and have an odd attitude problem at times. Only has been shown maybe 3 times. She can also be a bit obsessive and get upset when I don't text her for more than a day. She's got loads of my photos saved to her phone and remembers every little thing about me and has a list of my interests. I've seen it endearing until now. The trip. Day 1. The first day of the trip was great. She was bubbly and brought me a gift with a sweet note of appreciation. We went clubbing and headed to bed, separately, for the night. This is where things got weird. Remember, we slept separately. Well, I woke up and she was in my bed. But not in my bed. She was sitting upright on top of the blankets, next to me with her feet straight out and her back against my headboard while looking forward. I was startled and said, "Oh," instinctively. She just looked at me. She never said she was waiting for me to wake up, or maybe she was uncomfortable on the couch. Nothing. Then, she left my room. I have no clue how long she was sitting there. Day 2 to 3. Day 2. In the morning, we walked the city where she was engaged and wanting to hold my hand while we were out and about. By midday, still day 2, her attitude has shifted completely and she is near mute. She isn't conversing with me, enjoying any activities, or even smiling anymore. At the bar, arcade, or even at home watching movies. You know how those driving games take a silly little photo for your profile pic on the leaderboard? I was blowing a kissy face in mine. I glanced at hers and even snapped a pic without her noticing. Her head was tilted forward, looking up at the camera. She was blank-faced, and you can mostly see the whites of her eyes. It was like the film poster of a horror film, see, The Orphan 2009. Anyways, for the rest of the trip, she continued to not smile. She was cold to every service worker. She responded with one-word answers otherwise, complained about any and everything. I asked, "Are you okay?" a couple of times, and she replied, "I'm fine," avoiding eye contact every time. Car rides were silent. Dinners were silent. Day 4. Final day. I drove her to the airport at 3 a.m. I asked if she enjoyed her visit and she said it was okay. It was fine. I told her I enjoyed having her. She boarded her flight and left. I cannot figure out what caused this 180-degree shift. I paid for everything, took her to all sorts of events she wanted to go to, and even took a day off, my first sick day, ever, to take her to more. I felt myself overcompensating because I felt insecure of being a terrible host or something. I've had several friends stay with me and express to me that they enjoyed themselves so much they never wanted to leave. I don't believe I did anything so wrong to ruin this trip. When she arrived home, she did not contact me, but she posted photos and videos of me captioned, "Mine," on her social media. I haven't brought this conversation to her yet. All of my family and friends believe I narrowly avoided a Celine Yolanda/Lifetime film situation and that I was potentially with someone unstable. What do you think? Story 17. Posted by Impressive Story 1551. To the stranger who asked, "Can I hold you?" I'm on a throwaway account for privacy reasons. This was fairly recent. It was the evening on the day before my first day of an upper-class grade in high school. So basically, there's this trail a couple of blocks away from my house that starts in between two houses and goes back through a row of residential houses, and then it leads into a path into the woods. The path is usually fairly populated, especially during the summer, with lots of runners, tourists, bikers, etc. I've never felt endangered on the trail before this day, and I've even walked on it alone at night, pouring rain, etc. Anyway, so it was a bright and sunny summer day, right before my first day of school. I was walking my very not scary dog, and we were nearing the beginning of the path, still in residential row, when I noticed this harmless-looking guy running towards me. He was wearing athletic clothes and running shoes, so I thought absolutely nothing of him. As I continued to walk a little deeper into the path, still not in the forest section, I heard him turn around and start running towards me. I again didn't think much of it because I figured he was looping back around to continue his run. He was tall and athletic looking, but nothing too intimidating. He started to run ahead of me further into the path, but then he turned around again to run towards me. That's when I started to get a little suspicious. He did another circle around and started running back towards me when I heard him say, "Excuse me." I was 100% expecting him to be a lost tourist, since I live in a pretty populated area, and I assumed he just wanted directions, so I stopped and answered, "Yes," politely. At this point, I was still pretty close to the entrance of the trail, but I was definitely in the secluded section where we were nearing the dense forest. There was also nobody else on the trail from where I could see, which I didn't notice until the end of our interaction. After I initially acknowledged him, I noticed him nervously looking around and frequently avoiding eye contact to flip his head around in search of something which I assume was bystanders. He then asked, "How much do you weigh?" And immediately my flight or fight response kicked in. My heartbeat even now is picking up just remembering that feeling. I answered quickly, "I'm sorry, but that is absolutely none of your business." I started to slowly back up while watching him to make sure he wasn't going to make any jumps at me. My voice was also gone at the time from recently being sick, so I immediately got more nervous because I knew I couldn't scream for help if he had any foul plans. After I declined his prying question, he then started walking closer to me, still nervously looking around. I was getting extremely anxious now, but I tried to remain calm and assertive. He then asked, "Can I pick you up?" Meaning physically, and my heart dropped even more. I said, "Absolutely not. Step away from me now, sir," and I started to walk away more quickly. I was walking towards the exit of the trail, yet it was still extremely secluded and there was nobody else on the trail when he came up to me again and then said, "Do you want to feel this and guess how big it is?" And he exposed himself. Immediately, I would have screamed if I could, but my lost voice could only talk so loudly, and I said, "Get the hell away from me. You are disgusting." I quickly turned around and started walking fast to the street at the side of the trail when I truly think an angel was sent for me. I saw an older woman walking two large dogs, and I speed walked up to her and said very quietly, because I could hear the man walking quickly behind me, "Can you please act like you know me?" And she immediately was like, "Oh my goodness, hi friend, how are you? Come walk with me." And I turned around to see if the man was still behind me, and he was sprinting away from us and nervously looking back at me while running back up the trail. But the story does not end here. The woman and I continued to walk as I started crying, and I was shaking violently, telling her about what had just happened. We walked along a street that was connected to the trail back towards my house, but we decided not to go straight to my house because we didn't want to lead my stalker to my direct address in case he continued to follow us, and thank God we did that. Because he was. As we were walking along the street and we started to walk farther away from the seclusion of the trail and more towards the populous streets, I noticed a dirty car driving very slowly towards us with no license plate on the front. Immediately, even from several hundred feet away, I could just feel it was him, and I told the woman that I thought it was him coming towards us. Thankfully, there were more people around us, so we just kept walking, because if we had turned around, it would have been 10x more dangerous going back towards the dark and hidden trail. As the car drove by us, I put on a bitch face and stared directly at the driver, and of course it was him. He stared back at us with large, wide eyes, and I then guessed he was possibly on drugs. I still don't know, though. He continued down the street away from us, but then started speeding at the opposite direction and back towards the trail. We started to walk up closer to the crowded streets and more towards my house when I saw him circle by again. He circled 2 more times, and as he was circling for the final time, I knew I had to get his license plate on the back photographed in case I were to contact the police. His license plate on the back was only a paper with letters written on. However, I did take a photo, and it came in handy later on. After a while of walking around to avoid leading him to my house, he was gone, so I quickly thanked the lady and ran in. I burst out in tears and told my dad what happened. All of my parents' friends were at our house at the time, including 2 huge ex-police officers, and man, when I tell you, the entire group ran out of my house, cursing, saying they were going to *king kill that pedophile. They ended up running around the entire neighborhood with my license plate photo, looking for the car. And guess what? They found him. He was still circling the streets looking for me when one of my dad's friends found him. They said he still had the same wide eyes. He called the police when he found his car circling, and the cops sped in and immediately pulled him over, and he was arrested. They literally had to hold my dad's friend back from beating the living daylight out of him. Long story short, the aftermath was me filing a restraining order and attempting to get him imprisoned because he had in fact been arrested numerous times before for battery, sexual assault, etc., but he had somehow escaped. So I found a wanted man on the run. But ladies, unfortunately, he was released from jail after about 1 month. To this day, I believe the justice system failed this case, but time has passed and there's no longer anything I can do but keep my eyes peeled and always stay alert. I have not walked on the trail since the incident. Before that day, I had walked my dog on it almost daily. It was a peaceful environment for me, now forever ruined. To the man, I hate you. I hope someday you rot in prison forever. I will never forget the fear and embarrassment I felt that day. No young girl should ever have her favorite walk ruined because of a disgusting pedophile. I will forever wonder what he had done if my angel had not saved me. Possible kidnap? Not sure. But I am glad I never found out.